Can anyone hear me? Here we go. All right. Okay, so Mr. Hockey Jerk, how are you doing, sir?
Take two. I'm doing good. How are you?
Perfect. I don't know what happened there. It was all set up, and then it just went to hell in a handbasket like it always does.
I blame Russia.
Yeah, probably. Sounds good. All right. I'm seeing that I have bars now, so you guys should be able to hear me now. I'm hoping to God. Let's hit me in the chat here, guys. Can you hear me? I know it's a little bit delayed, but that's okay.
I got the YouTube open, and you are making sound, so that's good.
Perfect. All right. Since few things have happened since we sat down last. Let's get the Evander Kane nonsense out of the way really quick, like I did last show. I feel like I like how we did it last show, so we're gonna do it again. So the current status of Evander Kane is he is not at training camp. The NHL cleared him on the gambling allegations. However, they are other allegations that obviously have been made about domestic and sexual assault, as well as they said they're also looking at a possible COVID protocol breach. So it was interesting how they came out, because at first it was just like, oh well, we think there's a COVID protocol thing, and that was that, and then they released kind of another statement and updated it for the other allegations. So currently, Evander Kane not at training camp. Is he going to be on the team this year? I don't know. At this point, I don't even care. I mean, I care, but not enough to like spend any significant amount of time on it on the show. Anything you want to add to that, Jerk?
Well, I think if there was any question on whether or not he would be ready to go for opening night, I think this answers it. I mean, how many times you talk about it with holdouts, with injuries, with all that stuff? You know, if you have to jump onto a moving train, it's so much harder. And he's already missed a full week of training camp, and stands to miss more. I don't think we'll see him the rest of 2021, because obviously everything takes different amounts of times. But if you want to be simple about it, the gambling allegation took 2 months to clear.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have the sexual assault one, and they have the COVID protocol one. I mean, it could just as easily be 2 more months for each.
Yeah.
It could also be less. It could also be more. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Regardless, I don't think we'll see him. And again, I'm like you. I don't particularly care.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at with that right now. All right. So let's move on to some other fancy dancy stuff. I said some NHL, just some quick NHL news first. The Washington Capitals released their jersey ad. That are obviously jersey ads are being added to the league this year, which I don't like, but I saw the Capitals one and I don't hate it. Like I know a lot of people are concerned that this is a slippery slope to ending up like, the European leagues where they're just, they're NASCAR shirts. But I don't think the NHL is going to get to that point. Like, I don't think they would let it get to that point. Now, stranger things have happened, but like the helmet ad, like I was really up in arms about the helmet ad initially, and then I saw it and I was like, whatever, I'm over it. Like it just got to the point where it didn't even really bother me as the time went on. And I saw the ad for the Capital sweater, and I didn't really I don't like it, but I feel like it's going to be one of those things where I don't like it, but halfway through the season, I'll forget about it. And it won't even, because it doesn't really, I think it's as good as it's going to get for a sweater on an ad. You know what I mean? Or an ad on a sweater, rather.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's small. It blends in. So, from that perspective, it's already, it's not in your face, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, I've always felt, and I still feel this way, even though we have now seen the NHL trend to ads on jerseys, I've always felt that the history and the lore of hockey jerseys, at least in the NHL, was always so sacred that they would not become NASCAR vehicles.
Right.
And I still feel that way. I think that the NHL and NHL fans are so in love with jerseys and uniforms that I don't know that it will get to that point. I mean, maybe it will, but based on everything I know and think, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that would concern me is like how they've added all the digital ads to the playing surface on the broadcast, where you have it like behind the glass now, and you have the, and I think that is the only thing that would concern me, is based on that.
Yeah. Here's your quick Sharks update. We're 10 seconds into the game, and Jeffrey VL is beating somebody up.
Nice. Yeah, so the Sharks playing Anaheim tonight. Pretty lean roster playing against the Ducks tonight, traveling down to Anaheim.
Yeah, it really is. Just a real quick, I guess guys who've played in the NHL before on a regular basis, Timo Meier, LeBanc, Gambrell, Nieto, Reimer, Shimmick. That's it, really.
Mm-hmm.
You've got guys who've had short stints, but those are your guys who are, I guess the word would be established. Couple interesting things. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but I'm William Eklund in another game, which means he'll have played in 3 or 4 games. I don't think it takes an expert to realize how Bob and Doug Jr. obviously feel about how he's done.
Yeah, I mean, and he couldn't play the other game because they were split squad. So unless he was going to hop on a plane, I
mean, if he really wanted to make the team, he would have.
Yeah.
But also, I believe this is Shimmick's first game, unless he played against Anaheim last Sunday. I'm not too sure on that one, but I believe it's Shimmick's first game. And very young lineup, as you said. I mean, you have Hataka as your number 1 right side defenseman, which I'm totally fine with. I think he's impressed a lot, but it's a young lineup. So if the Ducks end up running away with this one, I don't think there needs to be any major panic. I think we just need to...
I always panic over preseason games. Like, they lost twice to LA the other day, and I was pretty upset about it. I was, I started listing my jerseys on eBay. It was over. Like, because not only, they lost twice in the same game. They lost the game, and then they lost the bullshit shootout.
Right.
I mean, exactly. If this is the preseason, what's the season going to hold? No, obviously I'm not too concerned about any of that. So I think going back to the sweaters, like I understand the concern of creep, but I think they're here. So I think if that's what they're going to look like, and I think if that's the way they if they kind of blend into the other sweaters, I'm not. I don't like it, but I mean, what can I do? I'm not Gary Bettman. I can't put the genie back in the bottle. I just hope that it doesn't explode. Like, I hope it's not, next year it's like, oh, well, we got to get 2 ads because we got to, bump HRR a little bit more. And like, that's the only, I think, concern I have, is just the creep to more.
And I think that's a fair concern to have. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, I'm still of the belief that we're not going to see, NASCAR billboard,
Here's hoping.
Of that belief.
The Wild locked up Kirill Kaprizov for 5 years, $45 million, $9 million AAV. What say you?
Oh boy! I mean, now make no mistake. I like Kirill Kaprizov as a player. There's a couple of us, myself and Vince and a few others who have been eyeing this player all the way back to when he joined the Red Army in 2017. So it's a player we've been following for a while and expecting to see in the NHL, and now he's here. And a very good season. Make no mistake about it. I mean, 51 points in 55 games over an 82-game season. I mean, that's a 76-point season. Very good. But it's one season.
Right.
And I've kind of felt all year that, for last year anyway, that the Minnesota Wild were punching up. You know, like they were a good team, make no mistake about it. But I feel like they had a lot of guys who probably did better than they should have, or at least were anticipated to do. And so I wonder if the Wild do kind of drop back down a little bit. I wonder how much that'll affect Kaprizov. I mean, he's obviously a guy who can do things on his own, right? But it certainly helps when you've got somebody to do things with.
Yeah, this is the thing that would concern me, right? Is the Central is not the Pacific.
Right.
So I mean, Minnesota's going to be in tough. I'm concerned about the dollar amount for them because of those buyouts that they just did.
I was going to say that is a a spicy meatball there for next year. I mean,
like
Fiala is unsigned.
You want to try and get guys like like this is his first contract. Like this is his first non-ELC contract, and he's like, this is the part I don't understand. I mean, I understand like he had the Wild, like what were the Wild gonna do, right? Like not bring him back. Like he had them right where he wants them, but I mean, I hope to God this guy doesn't have a sophomore slump, because if he does, like, Wild fans are gonna turn on him so quickly.
Yeah, and especially too, rightly or wrongly, the fact that he's from Russia does add that extra stigma to him, where, you know, he just wants to go home and make money and blah 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 and all this. You know, it's worth saying, after it's all said and done, you know, he is a talent. I mean, he's easily their best player. I don't think anybody would debate you on that, but you gotta show that you can do it again. You know, what he did last year was awesome for them. I mean, for sure. Is it $9 million awesome? I don't know. Yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, maybe if he does that 2 or 3 years in a row, it's a different story. But, you know, it's huge, because, you know, he obviously helped them get to the playoffs. He was very good on the ice, but also the Minnesota Wild have not had somebody to be excited about since Marian Gaborik. And for those who have forgotten about Marian Gaborik, he was on the Wild a long time ago. So, you know, it's kind of a double-sided deal here, where it's like, yeah, he's good on the ice, but also I'm imagining he got a lot of Minnesota Wild fans excited about hockey again. And if he has that sophomore slump you're talking about, it's going to be all bad real quick. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just Marty's, like a Tiger saying, the Wild are trending into Vancouver Canuck territory, and he's not wrong. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of money there, not doing a whole lot. But we are going to talk about the Canucks later on as we finish our Know Your Enemy series. Just gonna move on here. Like, that's the thing. Like, I get nervous about the way this is trending, because I mean, this is gonna have a ripple effect through the entire league, right? Like, and I just wonder, like, is your guy coming off an ELC, like, they have so much power, and then, like, I don't know where this goes. Like, I don't know how this ripples out and affects the rest of the salary cap, right? Because obviously your veterans are going to expect to get paid, but if your kids are coming out of your ELC and jumping right into $7, $6, $8, $7, $8 million, $9 million contracts, I mean, who's going to get squeezed there? Well, not only that, but, you know, you kind of mentioned the Vancouver Canucks, and the thing that I kind of thought about immediately when Kaprizov signed this deal is like, okay, there's no way Elias Pettersson is making less than this, because even if maybe he's not a better player, maybe they're the same player, or maybe Pettersson's a little worse, Pettersson's got more track record. Yeah. And so, like you said, it creates this ripple effect, and most signings do create a ripple effect, but something like this, where a guy who's played one half season gets, you know, what, $50 million over 5 years? 45. Or $45 million over 5 years. So it's, you know, it's definitely going to stir things up a little bit. As much as I would like the Sharks to have a player like Kaprizov on their team, the potential of that kind of big contract definitely is scary. Yeah, and and it's, I'm going to segue this into something else for just quickly, because while we're on the topic, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's going to happen when Mario Ferraro comes up? And I really like Mario Ferraro, but I don't put him in the category of these players.
Like he's really good, but is he Elias Pettersson good? I don't know if I would go there.
He's also a first-time RFA with no arbitration rights.
Kirill Kaprizov was also
true,
right?
That's true, but
and if when we talk about like the potential deals for Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes,
that's a fair point. The only counterpoint I would make to that is all three of those players obviously score more than Mario Ferraro does.
Sure, and that definitely matters. Like, and I like Mario Ferraro, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if I put him in that stratosphere of players.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, he's not Quinn Hughes until he can score like Quinn Hughes does, and there's been no indication that he will ever do that. I mean,
yeah,
Quinn Hughes, granted, he had a down year this past year, but even then, 41 points in 56 games. If that's a down year, Jesus.
Yeah, and if I let's also bring in the chat, he's already probably 26 years old. He's not some 20-year-old on Kaprizov, and that's fair.
It's absolutely a fair point, and it's a correct point. It's a point.
He's way closer to his prime than some of these other players.
I would say he's even way closer to his prime than Elias Pettersson is. But
for sure.
And Blutch, that's a good point that you make, and it's a point I've made many times before. The only thing I would say to that is, I mean, he's a first-year NHL pro.
Yeah.
And, we've seen before, even if leagues implement the same size ice sheet, they're very different. And that's not to say that he won't continue to be this good, but it's not an absolute, I don't think.
Yeah, so the NHL, we know that the NHL released its COVID protocols earlier in the offseason here. And we know that, like, Rocky Thompson, for example, decided to step down from his coaching job over the vaccination protocols. And we have some players that are also, basically, potentially sitting out on the trade block, assigned elsewhere. Tyler Bertuzzi, rumored to be on the trade block. Bodie Wild was sent to the Swedish Hockey League. Zach Ronaldo got cut from camp and is assigned to the AHL for now. Mackenzie Blackwood and Travis Hamonic, rumors that he might opt out again after opting out last season. So, or in the bubble, sorry. And these guys are also on the trade block. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm, like, full disclosure, I'm vaccinated. I think everybody should get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. If you choose not to, that's your right, and nobody, it is what it is right now. But at the same time, if you wanna play, you gotta if you want to play, you got to play ball, basically.
Yeah.
And all of those players you mentioned are players who are going to miss time just by virtue of the cross-border travel. I mean, Bodie Wild's a different situation because he is in the Swedish Hockey League, but the one that stands out to me is there's actually two. Mackenzie Blackwood, because he's New Jersey's starting goalie.
Yeah.
And a lot of these games that he would hypothetically miss are towards the end of the year when you're thinking New Jersey might be pushing for a playoff spot should things go their way. And the other one that stands out to me is Travis Hamonic, just because, like, and I don't like to speculate on what a guy's got going on, but
for sure,
he was on the Islanders. He requested the trade to either, any of the Western Canadian teams because he wants to be closer to his family, which is fine, no problem. But as you said, he skipped out on the bubble last year. He might skip out on this season as well. So it really just makes you wonder kind of what does he have going on? Is it a situation like, because his vaccination status, as far as I know, is unknown. Mm-hmm. So is it a situation where he just doesn't want to be vaccinated, or is he vaccinated but has personal issues? Who knows?
Right.
And I think, there's a rumor going around that apparently Vancouver, despite just signing him to a 2-year extension, is looking to trade him for this fact. And I just think,
well, I mean, if you're especially a team like Vancouver, there's more American teams than Canadian teams. So if you're on a Canadian team, you play more divisional games than anyone else. So you're still going to get plenty of games against Edmonton and Calgary. But the rest of your games are, and other than like a trip to Winnipeg here and there, but I mean, the rest of your games are in the States. And, that is, that's the problem, right? I'm with you. Personally, fully vaccinated. Think everyone should do it. But if you choose not to, that's your choice. And I get that. But for me, then that comes with, consequences, right? It really annoys me when people are like, oh, I'm being discriminated against. No, you're not. You made a choice, and now you're dealing with the consequences of your choice. This is the way things are going, and you don't have to like it. That's fine. And I'm not here to turn this into a political podcast, because God knows that's the last thing this world needs is another political podcast. But for me, if the league lays down the law and says this is how it's going to be, then, you have a choice. You either do it or you don't. And if you don't, then you have to deal with the consequences of it. I don't want to hear you bitch because you've made a choice, then now there's consequences. I don't have any sympathy for any of these guys.
No, me neither. And, everybody, I mean, say what you want about what people have to say, but, Hamonic obviously has his family issues.
For sure.
Blackwood said there's some medical concerns. I think Tyler Bertuzzi's been pretty quiet on the situation, but the guy and another one too. I don't know anything about what's going on with him, but Josh Archibald is also not vaccinated, and I just think all of those is kind of they're kind of just on an island doing their own thing. But the one that's interesting to me, just in terms of how it's going to shake out, is the Bodie Wild situation, because I don't know if you saw it, but he actually posted on Instagram basically saying I wish my human rights were, enough or something to that effect.
Right.
Played the human rights card. And
that's where I make the wanking motion and move on. That's, I mean, like I said, you made a choice. You made a choice. So deal with the consequences of your choice. That's that's just the way I see it. I mean, I hope some of these guys will come around and figure it out. But I mean, I don't know I don't know if there's any Sharks players that are not, that are in this boat. I mean, we haven't heard anything yet. I feel like we would have heard something by now if there was, but who knows?
I just think, I mean, I don't know either, and I don't want to speculate, but Doug Wilson was asked if the team was fully vaccinated, and he kind of gave a non-answer.
Okay.
Makes me wonder, if that first road trip to Canada, which I believe is towards the end of October, if we're going to see a surprise healthy scratch.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we'll see. I mean, no one's really come out and said anything, so I'm not going to, I don't want to ridicule people. I just, I think these guys made their choice, and now, there's the consequences are here. And I guess you're right, so we'll see if we have anyone who is a surprise healthy scratch when it's time to play up north. And then we'll ridicule them then.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so let's get into our let's finish up our Know Your Enemy series here. We have a few teams to finish up. So let's start with the Los Angeles Kings. Projected cap space, last I checked, was about $2.7 million. In is Philip Deneau, Alex Edler, Victor Arvidsson, out Troy Grosnick. And yeah, not a whole lot of change there, but some really nice additions for that team, I think. I think Philip Deneau is an interesting one to bring in, because this is a team that's loaded with centers. So I wonder if that signing is going to look bad in a couple of years if Philip Deneau suddenly making the money he's making as your third line center.
That was my exact thought as well. I mean, I don't, it's not, it's not any question. Philip Deneau is obviously a good player, but
oh, definitely, yeah.
$5.5 million per year for 6 years. I mean, that's a lot to pay a guy who, like you said, could potentially be your third line center. I mean, we've covered it numerous times how many center prospects the Los Angeles Kings have. I mean, Turcotte, Byfield, Velarde, Thomas, Lizotte. There's a lot of guys. And so some of these guys going to get traded, maybe shift to the wing, maybe, but it's definitely a calculated risk bringing in somebody like Phil Deneau. But even then, for what LA is trying to do, they're obviously bringing in Victor Arvidsson, bringing in Alexander Edler. It's obvious that they're trying to accelerate their timeline a little bit. And I don't know that I'm ready to say they're a playoff team, but I certainly think they have a chance to go for it. I think we've said before many times, after Vegas and Edmonton, it's kind of like jump ball for that number 3 spot. And it could just as easily be the LA Kings. I think Alexander Edler coming in, I think, obviously the analytics community has grown to dislike him over the last couple of years, but I still think he's a very solid defenseman. And, Drew Doughty appears to have turned the ship around a little bit. And they've got younger guys as well, Matt Roy, Sean Walker. Like, these are young defensemen who are already contributing. And, they got Cal Peterson locked up as well, so he's obviously going to be the guy there. I just think, even if they're not quite there yet, I really think they got a lot of good stuff going on. And, they took advantage of Nashville to pick up a player in Victor Arvidsson. I mean, it was kind of the perfect situation for them. They gave away the extra assets that they had, so they didn't really hurt their draft pick pool, and they were able to get him for cheaper than he's probably worth, just because Nashville was in a pinch. So I think, in the years Rob Blake has been the general manager, I think he's found a way to outdo himself every summer. I think he's really helping steer the LA Kings in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a hell of a job he's done. I agree. Rob Blake has done such a great job of rebuilding that team and doing what needed to be done. A lot of rookie general managers don't have the stones to do what he did. Like, he basically came in right away and said, this isn't working, and we're going to tear it down a little bit, and we're going to, and then we're going to come back up. And so far, I mean, he's been Yzerman-esque almost, as far as like the way he's built that team. Now, will it be a team that, goes and wins a bunch of Stanley Cups? I don't know. Too soon to tell, but the potential's certainly there, unfortunately, for us.
Well, and you mentioned Rob Blake having the gumption to do some of the things he's done. I mean, think about that 70s line: Tanner Pearson, Jeff Carter, Tyler Toffoli. How beloved that line was for LA Kings fans, and how good that line was for the LA Kings. And Rob Blake comes in and he's like, no, we're getting rid of all 3 of them.
Yep.
And he's made it work out. He got what I think was a very good return for Jeff Carter. Very good return for Tyler Toffoli as well. Tanner Pearson, he probably wants a do-over on, but even then, like, he's had, he's made no hesitation in doing what he thinks is right for the team, and I commend him for it. Obviously, a general manager's moves don't contribute to the Stanley Cup, but if they did, I mean, Rob Blake would be at the top of the list. And real quick, your Sharks update. Looks like Ryan Merkley has scored to make it 1-1.
There we go. All right, so yeah, I mean, for me, the Kings, here's the thing with the Kings. The Kings are in such a great spot, right? Because I think every team has to get to a point where the rebuild has to be over, right? The rebuild eventually has to end, and you have to go for it, or you at least have to start getting yourself into a position to go for it. So if the LA Kings, if they miss the playoffs, big deal. Okay, so you get another lottery pick, probably a high lottery pick, but a lottery pick nonetheless. And if you make the playoffs, well, you're just happy to be there, and it's house money. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, no one's expecting this team to win a Stanley Cup, but if they go in and, win a round, or even just push a team around in the first round and maybe, go out in 6 games or whatever, big deal. Like, you were just happy to be there anyway, and it's just experience for some of those younger guys.
Right, and I think, the biggest kind of criticism of the LA Kings, which, I mean, they're rebuilding, so it is what it is. But my biggest knock on them was you look at their forward group, and it's like that top line, Dustin Brown, Anjay Kopitar, Alex Iafallo, very good first line for them. I don't think that's ever in question. But beyond that, it was like, okay, Jeff Carter and a bunch of guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring in Victor Arvidsson, some secondary scoring. They were patient with Adrian Kempe. Now he looks like a good player. They gave Andreas Athanasiou a chance. He works out for them. They gave Trevor Moore a chance. He worked out for them. So it almost kind of feels like there's these guys where, especially in the case of those three I mentioned, like, they kind of had their chance and they sort of missed it, and to the Kings' credit, it was like, no, let's wait and see. Let's kind of see what happens here. And they bring in Philip Deneau as well. The LA Kings, they now have a second line. They have a third line,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we were critical of going back a few shows ago is I don't even remember what show it was. It may have been our expansion draft show, but all three of us and Kevin, were saying like, yeah, this LA Kings blue line is a nightmare.
Yes.
And bringing in Edler, locking up Roy and Walker, like it's still a bit of, it's definitely
it's going to be an adventure.
It's definitely an egg. It needs to be sat on for a little bit longer, but it's, they're on their way.
Yeah, like again, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're a playoff team, but I think they could absolutely be in the mix.
Absolutely. I really think it's between them and Vancouver for that third spot.
Oof.
Hot take. There you go.
All right. Obviously, Seattle is their entire team's new. We've kind of talked about Seattle a bunch, so I'm not going to go super into Seattle. I'm just going to ask you, where do you think they finish?
Jeez. I don't know. I'm really nervous to make a prediction because I thought Vegas was going to be 6 out of 7, and we all know what happened. So, they have a good team. Like, they've got some very good guys on the wing: Eberle, Schwartz, Donskoy, Jared McCann. If you play, this podcast loves Jared McCann. We have to mention him, but they have a lot of good guys. They don't have that elite talent, and that's exactly what we all said about Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, who's to say? I don't think Seattle will be top 3, but if they were, it wouldn't surprise me just because their forwards are very solid. They've got a really good goalie in Philip Grubauer. That blue line is a bit of a project. They could probably stand to add a guy, but I think they're going to be in that middle pack. And I said it last show as well, but if you ask me, in the Pacific, there's, really 3 absolutes in this division. It's Edmonton in the top 2, Vegas in the top 2, and Anaheim 8th out of 8. Other than that, it's sort of anybody's game here.
Yeah, to me, like, they're I think 4-5. Like, they're a 4-5. Like, I see Seattle as a 4-5 team, and maybe they'll surprise me, but I don't know. Like, there's a couple other teams where I have like some serious question marks, but I'm not afraid of Seattle, but I don't think they're Anaheim either.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how I feel too, and I'll tell you what too. Even though, we kind of already talked about them, right? But looking at Seattle, looking at Los Angeles, looking at Vancouver,
mm-hmm.
It's honestly making me like want to do a double take on Calgary, and Calgary's we talked about their good players, like that's they've got good players, it's indisputable, but I'm looking at the roster of those 3 teams I mentioned, and I'm looking at where Calgary's been the last year. I wouldn't be surprised if Calgary is the one who just stubs their toe early and just tumbles all year.
Oh, yeah.
And
I have
and Johnny Hockey is a pending UFA. Like, that's, regardless of what anybody says, that is going to be a dark cloud all year.
I think, and even if Calgary stumbles, and we kind of said this, I think, last show, and I think I said it, but I'll say it again, that, the thing to me with the Flames is, like, this is it for the Flames. They have to do something this year, because if they don't, it proves that this project is just broken, and and it's time to probably think of some drastic moves in Calgary if this doesn't work. And I honestly don't like Calgary at all coming into this season.
No,
I think Calgary to me, I mean, they're a 6-7 team in this division.
And they're, I feel like Calgary is almost going to be similar to the Sharks of the last 2 years, where you look at the roster and you say, yeah, there's some talented pieces on this roster, and nothing just clicks, right? I mean, you think like Monahan, Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Backlund, Lindholm, Coleman. Like, I mean, these are all good players, but it's just there's something here for me, and even their blue line. I think their blue line is very solid, but there's just something here for me that just doesn't pass the smell test.
And not only that, but now you're into a full year of Daryl Sutter. Oh, and Daryl Sutter is the guy you bring in. Daryl Sutter's the guy you bring in when you think you're going to squeeze that last little bit of juice to get a team over the hump. If Daryl Sutter can't get anything out of this team, it's just going to make things worse, because not only is everything going to be awful, but those players, Daryl Sutter has a very short shelf life as a coach.
Right. Well, and even then, there's just, it's a shame that after so many years of that team being good, forwards being good, defense being good, it's a shame that after finally getting a goalie, nothing else is clicking.
Yeah.
Because how many goalies did, since, 2015, when they kind of resurged there a little bit, how many freaking goalies did they go through?
Oh.
And it's remember Brian Elliott?
Yeah.
Remember Mike Smith? Remember Big Save Dave? They really burned through a lot of guys, and it didn't take them anywhere. Now they have a good goalie in Jacob Markstrom, and the roster's not as good in front of it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So let's move on to Vancouver, because I think this is going to be interesting, because you're much higher on the Canucks than I am.
I am. Am I too high on them? Probably. But I really like the things they have. It's worth noting, Pettersson and Hughes not signed yet, but according to people out there, I think the fourth period was one of them. Hughes is close, 6 times 7-ish, and Pettersson is a 3 times
8-ish.
Something.
8-ish is what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys are signed. I think, just looking at the roster, though, I mean, this top 6, Besser, Horvat, Miller, Tanner Pearson.
Well, let me give the rundown here quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the Vancouver Canucks just updated cap space here, about $13.7 million in cap space, which is obviously going to be quickly evaporated if those two guys do, in fact, sign. Coming in is Jason Dickinson, Tucker Pullman, Luke Shen, Nick Petan, who I really like, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Connor Garland, and Yaroslav Halak out. And this is the crazy thing. So out is Braden Holtby, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, Louis Eriksson, Nate Schmidt, Alex Edler, Stephen Bershey, and Jake Virtanen. There's some additions here that I really like. I really like Nick Petan. I really like Jarl Halak for $1.5 million. I think he signed for. Yep. Is a steal.
Yeah,
I love that move.
I agree. I honestly think Jarl Halak might be the most underappreciated goalie in the league.
One of, yeah. I would agree. Jarl Halak would, when the Sharks were going shopping for a goaltender, Jarl Halak was the guy that I had hoped that the Sharks would look at, because I thought he'd be a good, I hold him in, I like James Reimer, but I definitely put Jarl Halak, a step ahead. Now, obviously, it looks like the plan, and we'll get back to the Sharks, is to obviously have Adin Hill be the guy, which is fine, right? I'm just not sure he is the guy yet. I think he has potential to be, but we can get to the Sharks in a minute. Vancouver. Why are you so high on this team? Because to me, I feel like there's a lot of turnover on this roster, and there's some things that I really like, but there's some other things where I'm I don't know. Like, this is a team where I think they could be competitive. This is a team that could also, with so many new faces, could, take a while to get things sorted.
Sure. So I think obviously Thatcher Demko is the guy there. He's getting $5 million a year for the next 5 years. It's pretty indisputable who the number one goalie is there. But, and as much as I liked Braden Holtby, he was abysmal last year, and I hate to say it, earned his buyout.
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing in Yaroslav Halak, he's a better option. Like, first and foremost, like you have that confidence if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan or if you work for the organization, you have that confidence that know that your backup goalie can win a game for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the goaltending is better. Defense,
that's, to me, that's going to make or break.
I agree. I'm a fan of Tucker Poolman, but I also understand why people aren't really a fan of him. Tyler Myers, that's probably the one kind of eyesore for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I'm probably the only one, but I still think that OEL has a lot to give. He, the advanced analytics, they're all there, and they're worth pointing out. That's, obviously, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You should use it. But, I look at a guy who averaged last year on a bad Arizona Coyotes team, averaged half a point per game and regularly skated in 22, 23, 24 minutes a night. Like, he can go, and he still puts up points on a bad team. Like, what do you think he can do with, some of the guys in Vancouver? And I started to mention it before, where their forwards, they're already pretty loaded. Pettersson, Horvat, Besser, Miller, Pearson, like, these are all really good offensive players. They bring in Connor Garland, who I think is very underappreciated. He's a very good player. Nils Höglander is another year older.
Yep.
And so he's obviously better. I just think, specifically for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think Vancouver's forwards are much better than Arizona's, and I think that's going to help him tremendously. The goaltending is obviously better, which will, it'll take some of that pressure off of the defense as well, even though you don't want to leave your goalie hanging out to dry. If he is on his own, you at least have more confidence that a save can be made. I know they had Darcy Kemper in Arizona, but he was injured a lot, and they played a lot of games without him. And I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson has more to show. I think their forwards are very good. That top six, I'm going to say it, their top six is probably, for me, maybe top three in the league in terms of their top six forwards. I just think they're all good. They all bring something to the table.
Yeah, there's a lot of obviously a lot of young guys here. I think, to me, the defense is where I kind of side-eye this team. Mm-hmm. Like we were talking about earlier, we don't know if Travis Hamonic's going to play. I think I'm not a big OEL guy, but if they don't have to lean on him especially hard, I think that would be to his benefit. That's, to me, is the question when I look at this blue line, is how hard are they going to have to lean on OEL for minutes and for deployments. And if they can find, if they can shelter him and throw him out there, when the play's obviously in the other end of the ice, I think then, he can thrive. And you're right. I think he could be really, really good. I think if they need to rely on him to play big minutes all sides of the ice, that will be disastrous really quick.
I honestly, I'd put him out there even strength, put him out there power play, and let Quinn Hughes handle the penalty kill. Let these other guys, Tucker Poolman, let them handle the penalty kill. I think the problem with OEL and other guys like OEL, obviously Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, Drew Doughty, all these guys, is their bread and butter is offense. And then they have coaches who say, well, why don't you kill penalties for us?
Yeah.
It's that's not what they're there for.
Yeah, I don't know. I look to me I think Vancouver, I think they're good enough. They're going to be in the hunt. But I just think there are teams that I look at in the Pacific that I like more.
That's fair. I don't know. I have Vancouver as my number 3 team.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that high. Like, I think they're there. Like,
Sure.
they're probably, I don't know. Are they 3? I don't know who I even have as my 3. That's the problem.
What do
Like,
you
they're
mean you don't
definitely
have
in that
San
group
Jose
of.
up there?
There's a group of teams where I think it's gonna be interesting. I think Vancouver, LA. I still, Seattle could probably be interesting, but I'm not. They're kind of on that lower end of that tier for me.
Say San Jose.
Hey, look, the Sharks. I'm not as completely sour on the Sharks this season. I think a lot would have to go right to put the Sharks up in that 3rd spot.
Sure.
A lot would have to go right. But I don't think they're going to be a complete disaster, this team, and maybe they will be. And maybe that's just because like I'm too high on Martin Jones not being here anymore. But I mean, I want to see if, as long as they get competent goaltending, and are they going to get that? I don't know yet. None of us know, but it can't be worse than Martin Jones.
Well, and speaking of Martin Jones, real quick, you brought it up, so I feel compelled to mention it. Did you happen to see his handiwork tonight in Philadelphia?
My hair is very safe right now.
Yeah, and he got yanked halfway through the game.
Yeah, I feel for him.
He was only in the net for 30 minutes, but 727 save percentage. He let in 3 goals on 11 shots.
Well,
so
I think the flow's safe, guys. I think the flow is safe. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of things like for the Sharks, right? Because looking at the Sharks after we're looking at the rest of the division, like there's a lot of things that I need to know, right? Like, one, what's going to happen with Evander Kane, and is an Evander Kane-less locker room going to be a better locker room?
I think so. I mean,
but are you going to miss his contributions on the ice? Because again, like, I don't think much of Evander Kane as a person at this point in time, but as a hockey player, like, facts are facts. Like, he led the team in points last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, but maybe a happier locker room. I don't know. Like, there's so much with the Sharks that I just don't know.
Well, and I think, and we've made the analogy before, right? But I think in a happier, like with a happier locker room, if your guys, if you want to look at it as players, or if you want to look at it as a conventional job, say your employees, if everybody's happier, they're much more on board to get the job done, contribute. Yeah. If you work with somebody who sucks, you dread going to work, you dread being around them. And so, will they play better without Kane? Who's to say? I think based on everything that's out there, obviously Ian and I are not in that locker room.
No.
But based on everything that is out there, even if they don't play better, I think they will play happier. And in a way, being happier could help you play better. Or at the very least, more focused.
Yeah. Oh, we have to do one more team. There is another team we have to do. And that, of course, would be the Vegas Golden Knights with their projected cap space of 0, but they'll make it figure it out.
Yeah, well, the NHL is going to give them a credit, don't you know?
Fair enough. Nolan Patrick, Evgeny Dadonov, and Laurent Brossoit. Out, Thomas Nosek, Dylan Sekura, Marc-Andre Fleury, Ryan Reeves, Nick Holden, and Cody Glass. What says you about Vegas?
Well, I have an initial reaction. So I'm looking at this Cody Glass for Nolan Patrick 1-for-1 deal, and I'm just like, what are you doing, Vegas?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. Nolan Patrick, 2nd overall pick, obviously very good player in his junior career, but a player who's been injured a lot the last 2 years, and you don't know how that's affected his game. I think I would have rather held on to Cody Glass if I were Vegas, but at the same time, Vegas was definitely getting impatient with Cody Glass, so I can understand their logic in trading him. I don't know if I would have done it for Nolan Patrick. But you know what? Maybe Nolan Patrick's medical issues are behind him. Maybe he'll make me look stupid. And if he does, he can come on the podcast and tell me all about it.
But, yeah, I look at... I mean, there's still the class of the Pacific. I mean, I don't think there's any there's any doubt there, right? Like, this is still the class of the Pacific. I just wonder, this is again a team all in.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, sorry. And I just wonder how long they can keep this going. Like, how much longer do they have to be all in? You know what I mean? Because eventually you're just going to all in yourself out of contention. And I've seen like a lot of, are Vegas, are they on pace to just become the Sharks, where they were all in and had nothing to show for it after a bunch of seasons? Like, and I still think, I don't think the window's going to slam shut for Vegas like immediately here.
No, I don't think so either. But there's definitely some things that you look at and like, okay, if things don't work out for them, if they don't win the Stanley Cup this year, like, you can see where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a couple things that stand out to me. Number one, obviously, they found a way. They brought in Evgeny Dadonov. I like Evgeny Dadonov.
Oh, I like that move.
You don't like it? Or
no, I do like it. Yeah, no, it's a good move.
Yeah, I really like it as well, but my only concern is that when Alex Tuch is healthy,
mm-hmm.
and for those who don't know, Alex Tuch looks to be out until February, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
If when Alex Tuch gets healthy, number one, where are you going to find the cap space to make it all fit? Number two, where are you going to find the ice time for all these guys?
Yeah.
But you know what? I think they were really smart to keep Matthias Janmark. He gives them bottom six depth. I think they were really smart. Man, I'll tell you what, they got Alec Martinez on a sweetheart of a deal.
They did, yep.
Because he could have gone anywhere and gotten 6.5, $7 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what he said? He's like, me and my broken foot are going to stay right here. And he's going to take his 5.25 and he's going to like it. And they got him on a sweetheart, which I think is awesome for them. But also kind of on the negative side of things, like, okay, they seem to like going to the conference final. So say you go to the conference final again and you lose, is Robin Lehner going to be the reason you lost? Because the gab on Robin Lehner is that he's a 1B at best. He can't start 65 games. So if you do lose in the conference final, or basically if you lose,
mm-hmm.
is Robin Lehner going to be the reason for that? And I think Robin Lehner is a great player, great person, but can he be that 65 start goalie? It's still too early to tell, if you ask me. I mean, just because he hasn't done it yet, at least successfully. But also, I mean, going back to that inaugural team and how much everybody loves guys, what are you going to do with Riley Smith?
Yeah.
Because Riley Smith, he's a pending UFA. You've got Alex Tuch. You've got Evgeny Dadonov for another year. Maybe you bring Matthias Janmark back again if you want. But they really got to think about Riley Smith because, as they have the other guys. They're Marchessault, Carlson, Pacioretty, Stone, Petro, all these guys. Riley Smith is probably like the most underappreciated element of this team just because he's so good and does it with very little recognition. But he's also one of those guys where he's part of that golden misfits, as mm-hmm. they say. And so it's like, if you now all of a sudden you miss the playoffs next year and it's like, okay, well, we're going to let Riley Smith go and then we're going to do this and we're going to do this, and it's, they kind of, in a weird way, they almost have to do it this year just because of, like I said, Riley Smith, Matthias Janmark, these guys are up, but also like they got a lot of guys signed long-term who, if they can't get something done, it's going to be a logjam.
Yeah.
And
the only criticism I have of this team, because I like Robin Lehner. I think Robin Lehner's a good goalie. I think that having all that money tied up in goaltending between him and Fleury wasn't tenable. Like, something had to be done there. And I think, as much as I think people like Marc-Andre Fleury, but I still think this team sucks at center ice.
I agree with that 100%.
And I mean, they seem to, it's amazing to me because they seem to manage, even though, like, on what other team is Chandler Stevenson a 1C?
He was the 4C in Washington.
Right. So, I mean, that, to me, like, that's the one flaw I see with this team. I wonder, what this team looks like without Ryan Reeves too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a lot of, I mean, and this is the price that they're going to have to pay, right? Like they're going to have to let guys that people really like walk because again, there's not enough money. There's not enough room. But I'm curious to see because, you know, when the Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights play, you know, my big thing was always like, as long as they don't play the Ryan Reeves game, they'll do all right. Now, last season, they just got their ass kicked all the time. But that team wasn't very good either. But, you know, but I still found like they played more competitive games when they weren't chasing Reeves around the ice. And I'm not a big Ryan Reeves guy personally. Like, I could care less about that ilk of player. But, you know, after watching my team stupidly chase him around the ice in many a game and, you know, get blown out doing it, like, I wonder what effect not having him there is going to have on how difficult the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be to play.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of teams are going to benefit from Reeves no longer being on Vegas. Is there's one less distraction, right? I agree with what you said. I mean, this team is very very well endowed on the wings, right? I mean, Stone, Pacioretty, Marchessault Smith, Dadonov, Tuck, Janmark, like these are all really good wingers, but it's like I said, where are you going to find the ice time for all of them? But also the thing that stood out to me, and you can say what you want about William Karlsson, I think he's a good player. He's obviously not, you know, he's not the 78-point player from 4 years ago.
No,
but he's a good player.
He's good player. Like he's a guy that I would not kick off my team if he was on it. You know, is he a almost $6 million player? No, probably not.
You know what though? He is in the playoffs. I'll tell you that.
No, that's a good point.
He is one of those. He is one of those guys where regular season doesn't matter. You know, he'll be okay in the regular season, and then in the playoffs he's just dynamite.
Yeah, I will concede that point for sure.
Right, but he's not in the regular season. He's not a number one center, and I just look again. I like Evgeny Dadonov. You obviously like Evgeny Dadonov, but you're already plentiful at the wings, and you need centers. Why are you trading for another winger? Like, I understand Alex Tuck is injured, and you need somebody to pick up that slack. But that's why you re-signed Matthias Janmark.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point.
I think they'll be a good team, but like I said, their wingers are going to be fighting for ice time.
Yeah. I think they're the class of Pacific. I'm just curious to see how they fare against the rest of the West. Right? Sure. I want to see how they do against the Colorados of the world. Because again, I wonder, as much as I'm not like a big, you know, proponent of the Ryan Reeves type guy, I do have to wonder the impact, because it's not like the Sharks are the only team that have stupidly chased Reeves around. Colorado was guilty of it in their series too.
Right.
And I'm curious to see how, I'm curious to see how they stack up against the Colorados, and I think of resurgent Dallas Stars, because I think Dallas is going to be a team next year. Yeah,
and even Winnipeg as well.
I think Winnipeg's going to be up there. I think any team that has. I mean,
I honestly think and you know what? I'm telling you right now, similar to Vancouver, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Chicago as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think Chicago is going to be in the mix. That Central, I don't even know what to make of the Central. Like, I look at that division and it's a complete crapshoot.
You kind of wish that the Central could take all 8 playoff spots.
Yeah.
Like, we could see Vegas be dynamite against the Pacific and then just average against the Central, and it would be a total, you know, Jekyll and Hyde kind of scenario.
Yeah. No, definitely. All right, so let's move on to the Sharks, because that's why we're here. So just before we actually came on, there was a round of cuts announced. So we'll go through those first. Tristan Robbins got sent back to junior, who I thought had a really good camp. I really liked what I saw from him, but he was never going to be like, he's a guy who he has to play in the NHL or the Western Hockey League, and he was not taking a job. Like, as good as I thought he was in camp, I still think, like, him going back to junior is exactly where he should be.
Agreed.
And then the other players got assigned to the Barracuda, and they include defenseman Mark Alt, who I don't really have much to say about. Like, I only saw...
He was a surprise tryout.
Yeah. So, I mean, good on him for getting to go to the Barracuda, but I don't really have much to say on him. I was kind of surprised Joachim Blichfeld's already out of camp.
Me too. I thought he looked good.
Yeah. Noah Gregor also going to Barracuda camp, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, I thought... I mean, it's well documented. I'm a big fan of Noah Gregor, and I thought this was going to be his time to show that he belongs. And so, I mean, the fact that he was an early cut, I'm hoping it's just a situation where they want to see what they have in other guys, and maybe he gets called back up down the road. But I don't know. As a legitimate fan of his, it kind of sucks.
Yeah. Scott Reedy also got sent down. Another guy who I really liked in camp, but he was a guy who, even though I thought he had a good camp so far, he was never a threat to steal a job.
Right.
So to the Barracuda he goes, and that's fine. And also Zachary Sawchenko, who I like, but I mean, this again, we know who the goalies are. I know they're keeping Melnichuk up for a little bit longer, and I think that's just to get him some more reps, I think. And then he'll join Sawchenko on the Barracuda very shortly. But yeah, again, Sawchenko, he wasn't gonna unseat Hill or Reimer. Like, we know who the goalies are. Sawchenko's heading there, Milnichuk's heading there very, very soon. I think he'll get a couple more games in, and then, or they'll have him on the bench for a couple of games. Just to throw in case anything goes wrong. But other than that, I mean, it's Hill and Reimer. We know the goalies for this year's team. So yeah, I mean, other than I mean, obviously we mentioned we had some positive things to say about some of these players here. Through the rookie tournament, I know we haven't been able to see a bunch of stuff because it's 2021, and yet we just have games that aren't streamed at all. Unfortunately, right?
Unless you sign up and give them your address and do all this crap.
Oh, it's so painful. And even the audio thing, I was hoping to just listen to the one game on audio through the Sharks website, right? Just play it on my browser, right? Big deal. I'm on my computer, so why don't I just do? No, I can't, because apparently when I went there I got a 404. Other people didn't have that problem, but other people that are also Canadian did, so I'm assuming it's geo-blocked for some godforsaken reason. Who geo-blocks audio in 2021? The Sharks.
Because they want to grow the game, but not where you are.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I have said many, many times that, why would you put another team in Canada? If you put a team in Canada, you don't make one new fan, but if you put a team in a silly, quote-unquote stupid place, you can make new fans, right? I get that, but it bashes my head in. I can't even. Yeah,
But this is not anything new. We've seen before, right? Where teams will put their preseason games or their rookie tournament games. They'll live stream them on YouTube, and everybody has a good time. And for the Sharks, it's Nick Nollenberger is in there with his iPhone. Here's the password to get in. It's really.
Oh, poor Nick.
I know, I love Nick, but he was the first name that came to mind.
So now that we've complained about that, who has really stood out to you so far? Who would you, other than Eklund, because we're going to talk about Eklund in depth in a minute, who's really stood out to you? Who have you really liked in camp so far?
Well, everybody was really high on Jasper Weatherby, and I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid just because we hadn't seen him play any games, but I was at the Vegas game last Sunday where he had a goal and an assist, so I obviously watched him there, and he looked really good from what I heard in the game against Los Angeles that was on Tuesday. So obviously he's a guy I'm intrigued in. I think he's certainly playing well enough to get Doug and staff to maybe rethink that Gambrell extension.
Yeah.
But you know what, with Weatherby, like, say he plays, if it doesn't work out, like, he can go to the Barracuda. It's no harm, no foul.
Mhm.
But I think he's somebody that I've been impressed with really early on. And then I know a couple of us in Discord, we've been really high on him for a couple of years now. Maybe I'm biased because I picked him in a fantasy league, but I really liked what I saw from Hataka on Sunday.
Yeah.
I thought he played really well. There was one instance where Hill kind of caught himself out of position, and it's like, here comes Hataka, boom, kick save, like out of nowhere. And he just looked like his skating looked really, really good. His transition game looked really well. I would be surprised if he played in the NHL this year. Maybe he goes back to the Barracuda. Maybe he goes back to Finland. Who's to say? He's definitely that player where it's like, yeah, everybody knows he's not going to make the team this year, but you want to make a good impression so that people remember that for the next time around. And I think that's what Hataka has done.
Yeah. I echo that. I think a guy who's really stood out to me, who I really like, is Adam Raska. I've really liked his game. Yeah. And he's a guy who I think, I'm excited to, there's guys where I'm excited to watch on the Barracuda this year. And Adam Rask is a guy that I think that I would tune into a Barracuda game to watch.
Yeah.
Again, probably a guy that's not going to make the team out of camp, but I think he's looked really good. He's kind of all over the place, right? I like the Hataka. I've been really, really positive. I've liked a lot of things in his game too. I think, and guys that probably should look good at this point, but I think Shemlevsky's had a hell of a camp.
I agree. I think he's been very good.
I think he might be knocking. There's a couple of guys that are really knocking on the door for. I think to make this team out of camp, and I think if Shemlevsky doesn't make it, he's going to be one of the first guys called up. He's going to be next man up. I think.
I agree, and I think too, especially I personally think at this point now we have. This is the fourth preseason game tonight. We've obviously got two more.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still plenty of time. But I think right now I think you can pencil that fourth line as Nieto, Weatherby, and Cogliano. But all it takes is for one of those guys to get injured or have a stumble, and Chmelevsky's right there. And I even think at this one, his offense the last year has been, he's always been very good offensively, but I feel he's really dialed it in and really refined it. And so I think even if, say, Evander Kane doesn't come back, and then let's say somebody like LeBanc or Meyer or Balsers, they get injured or they struggle, I easily think Chmelevsky could jump up right there as well. How much his game has evolved over the last year and a half.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned Weatherby. Weatherby's a guy who, I was okay, when I watched him in the rookie things, I was okay, he looks good, but he should look good in this environment, right? He's
right.
He's a guy who's, he's significantly older than some of the guys he's playing against. At this point, he should completely excel in that environment. So I'm yeah, okay, great. Yeah, he looks good, but is he really knocking on Gambrell's door? I'm I don't know if I'd go there yet, right? And then I saw him in the next game, right? And obviously, I want to see how he does because as we go on, there's only a few preseason games left, and those rosters are going to start looking closer to NHL rosters. Mm-hmm. And that's where I really want to see Weatherby play, because even he's looked good, but again, it's still some of these teams that he's played, that I've seen him play against anyway, that have been, viewable, they've been some pretty lean rosters.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I'm interested. I'm a lot more interested in Jasper Weatherby now than I was before camp started. But I don't know if I'm all the way there to oh yeah, Gambrell's cooked. I'm just not there yet. But I think a couple more games, and I think then, if this continues, then the argument could be made. I just want to see how he does against a more NHL laden lineup.
Yeah, and that was why I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid at first as well, because it's like, same as you're saying, it's like, okay, he dominated a rookie tournament. Like, let's see what else he does.
Yeah.
And then
he's 23. Of course he dominated a rookie tournament.
yeah, it's exactly like remember how many rookie tournaments they made Barclay Goodrow go to? And
yep.
It's the same thing. And I think seeing him in Vegas last Sunday, I think is kind of what, maybe I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid quite yet, but I've got a glass of it in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And because, had the goal, had the assist, but just played so well, moved well, used his size. Like, he just did everything right, I think.
You know what else I also like? Another guy who's kind of stood out, who, again, a guy's going back to junior, Gannon Larocque actually has surprised me. Because when he was drafted, I kind of scratched my head, right? Because I'm like, yeah, okay, he's big lugging defenseman. But you know what? I take that back now, because at first I really scratched my head at that draft. I'm like, yeah, okay, big, huge lumbering defenseman, great. But I've actually, I think he's shown some stuff this camp. So
yeah, truthfully, I haven't gotten to see him play, but I also, I haven't heard anything negative about him, right? And as far as I can tell, he is he still on the roster, or did he get sent back?
You know what? I had the roster up, and I don't know if he got sent back or not. I had the most recent roster up, and I do not anymore.
Let's see. Here we go. I got the roster. He might
have been in the first round of cuts. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe he was. But even then,
what? Yeah.
Like, I have the roster right here. I don't see his name, but
okay.
But even then, like, he obviously did some good things. Even though I personally didn't get to see it, he did some good things to stand out, and I didn't really see any criticisms of him. So I think it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, yeah, you're probably not going to make it, but make a good enough impression for the next time around.
Yeah. No, and I think he did a good job for a guy that I didn't really think much of the pick, and now I'm intrigued. So let's talk about some players now, where obviously they've been they've been around a little bit now. I think from what you've seen of Ozzy Wiesblatt, what have you thought so far from his camp, if from what you've seen?
I didn't see much, but what I did see, I thought he was good. Not challenging for an NHL spot. But that's okay. Like, he can go back to junior, and he can be a beast there. Like, he wasn't fumbling around out there, right? But he's not there yet, and that's fine. He'll go back to junior, and he'll have a good season, and then we'll talk about it next summer.
Yeah. I think he's had a really good camp. Like, obviously, again, yeah, he's going back to junior. Probably in the next round of cuts, maybe even. He probably goes back. I don't think he's. I think he's still up.
Okay, let me see. Because I know these six, like, so far the Sharks have made cuts twice now this training camp, and both of them have been very like they just sort of came out of nowhere. It didn't feel like there was a formal announcement. But yes, Ozzy, he is still on the roster.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I think, I think maybe he gets another game and then he goes back. I think he's a guy who I think has shown enough where he is going to threaten for an NHL spot sooner than later. Like, I think that of him. And so getting him that experience to just hang out in camp for as long as possible, like, it's not going to hurt him to, just hang out with the pros for another few days. Right. So I don't know. I've been really impressed so far. A player who's gotten a ton of positive mentions, although I haven't really thought much of what I've seen and against. Again, that's very little, but like Ryan Merkley's getting a lot of positive mentions, which I didn't expect, because I know a lot of people were pretty sour on his Barracuda run last year. I know Kevin Lacey was really down on Merkley, but a lot of positive mentions in camp so far. Had a goal tonight. So what I have seen, like, it hasn't really. I haven't been impressed, but again, I've seen one, maybe two rookie games, and the one game.
So, real quick to interrupt you, sorry. Here's your Sharks update. Jeffrey VL just scored to make it 2-1, assisted by your pal, Adam Raska.
There you go. I love Adam Raska.
It was a nice little play. A nice 2-on-1, and wow, that was Hampus Lindholm that he just turned around. Jeez. Yeah, Raska just popped it right around Lindholm and was like, yep, okay, watch this.
Oh, I need to go watch this after.
And even then, VL didn't even really shoot it. He literally just put his stick in the slot and the puck hit it. So, very nice play. I mean, right there. I mean, you were talking about, lesser competition. I mean, Raska just rinsed Lindholm there. So
there you go. So, what have you seen, for Ryan Merkley, as far as, because this is a guy who needs to threaten for a roster spot at this point, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, he has a goal tonight, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like he's been super involved in the offense like we all anticipated, but I think defensively there's certain things that he's doing better. Like, he seems much smarter with his stick. That was kind of one thing that I had noticed.
Yes, yeah.
I as much as I want him to be really good defensively, I hope that it doesn't take away from his offensive talent, because the offensive talent is obviously really good. But so far it's there hasn't been much to go off of, but like I said, what we've seen, I think he's definitely an improved player, and I think he will I think he'll fare much better this year with the Barracuda, just to have that, a full season under more normal circumstances, more refined skills. I truly think that he'll thrive this year.
Yeah, I think he's, I've always said, I think he's a really talented player. As far as talented picks go, when I still like the pick for the Sharks. Where they picked him, where they got him, I think it was a great pick. The only thing I think that really concerns me is he still has this tendency that I've seen to try and do everything. There's a couple times in the rookie tournament where he just decided he was all five guys on the ice and he was going to do it all, which always ended terribly, right?
And you know what? I mean, it's worth noting as well. Only 2 of the 4 games so far have been on TV. But
yeah,
from what I've seen of him, there hasn't been a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that was in a couple of the rookie tournament games, and I'm glad that seems to have come out since. Yeah, I mean, I think with better players, obviously, to be surrounded with, and obviously you're not gonna try and beat everyone when, Hurdle and Detour are on the ice. Obviously, you're probably gonna, might defer a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking for big things from Merkley this year. Again, is he going to make the team out of camp? Probably not. But I think he is a guy who should be, he should be the guy in the situation where he's next man up, right?
Yeah, I definitely think at this point, I mean, he was drafted 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's, he doesn't need to be an impact player right now. I don't want anybody to get that idea, but he definitely needs to be knocking on the door, like you said. And so we'll see. The thing that stood out to me, actually, for the fact that this player hasn't done anything by no fault of their own, but Nikolai Knizhov is banged up right now.
Yeah.
He hasn't played a game, as far as I know. He hasn't been skating. So, I think it's safe to say Ferraro and Burns is a locked pair. What we have with Carlson, Vlasic, Šimik, but Knizhov thrived with Carlson, and so let's say Knizhov's not ready to go for the regular season. What's the what's the play there, right? Like, do you elevate Vlasic back up with him? Do you elevate Šimik? Does maybe somebody like Hataka all of a sudden have a chance to be in the NHL? Everything, specifically with the blue line, I kind of think everything is sort of hinging on what's up with Knyzhov.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, because I obviously, like, you could put Merkley up there, but then who's going to actually play defense?
Right.
I mean that's not, but whereas Hataka's been really good defensively. He's a guy who I think he's probably a guy who probably needs some AHL reps though, but I think he's definitely, I think he's probably put himself in that conversation.
Yeah. For
sure. Is he a guy that I think would you want to put him in that situation? Like, he's a guy like where I would get concerned, where you would put him on the roster and then Boogie plays him 4 minutes. Right. And then everyone else is getting bag skated to make up for it. Like, that is the only thing that would concern me with that play.
Yeah, I agree with that. Then I don't know. I mean, and he is only 20, right? So he's a young guy, but I mean, he's played 2 seasons in the Liga already, so he's got a lot of experience playing in the top men's league, So I'm with you. I definitely think some AHL reps would help him. I don't think he's an 82 game NHLer right here, right now. But I think in a bind, I think he could jump up and hang in there.
Yeah. I like I said, I would just be concerned that like Boogie plays him 5 minutes and plays everyone else extra.
Yeah, he gets the Tim Heed treatment.
Right. Jonathan Dahlen.
Oh man, he's had a quiet camp for me.
Yeah, same.
Especially because he's spent, he's been with Couture all camp. He was on Couture's line in the Vegas game. I believe he had I want to say he had an assist, and he had a nasty shootout.
That shootout goal was sick.
Yeah, but the game against LA, he was with Couture as well. I don't believe he did anything of substance, at least on the score sheet. So I mean, it's a 4-game preseason, so it's the definition of a small sample size. But
absolutely,
he was that guy that you expected to show up and blow it up right away. I mean, and we'll get to Eklund obviously, but
yeah, Eklund's next.
Except for this game, which is still ongoing. There's 8 minutes of a second period and then a full third period left, but the 2 games Eklund has played so far, he's got a point in both of them. So
yeah, like, I'm not super concerned about Dahlen yet, but like I agree with you. Very quiet camp so far. He hasn't really stood out, but he hasn't stood out in a bad way either.
Right.
Like, he didn't look like he didn't belong on the line with Couture. Like, he hasn't looked out of place, but he hasn't stood out either. So I think it's one of those things where I need to see a little bit more before I can really say what they have here. I feel like because he hasn't looked out of place, he's probably a lock for that opening night roster.
I could agree with that.
But I'm not like, but nothing's made me super excited.
Right. And that's kind of how I feel too. I agree with you. He hasn't been bad, but it's like, I was hoping that you were going to stand out. Like, maybe, if you played in 3 or 4 games, maybe you had a goal in 2 of them or 3 of them,
Yeah. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, that shootout goal was super sick.
Yeah, but it was a it was a pretend shootout in a pretend game.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, like, I was hoping for a little bit more, but again, like, I'm not like, I don't think he's done anything where like he can't be on the roster, but I think if you look at sources where the Sharks are going to need to find some offense, especially depending on what happens with Evander Kane, like, that is a guy that you probably want to be a little more excited about going into the season.
Right. I would agree with that, just based on the hype, right?
So let's talk about William Eklund, because obviously the big talk right now seems to be, could William Eklund be on the opening night roster?
I mean, prior to tonight's game, obviously, which is still, still going on. So there's time for that to change, obviously. But, 3 assists in his previous 2 games. So obviously he's got a knack for the offense, and his playmaking has been commended on Twitter, after every game. And he just, for 18, he just seems like he's really got it put together. Like offensively, he's always sniffing around everything. He's not afraid to be physical. He's not running guys over, but he's not shrinking away from contact either.
No.
And he just, I don't want to say that he's going to score 80 points as a rookie. I mean, maybe he will, but I'm not going to say that. But like, he's definitely a guy, I think, at this point, granted he is -1 right now, but plus minus is stupid anyway.
Correct.
I think at this point, especially with Evander Kane out, I think you give him the 9 games.
Yeah, like, to me, here's the thing, like, the score sheet is nice. Like, obviously, look, at the score sheet matters, right? Like, this is a guy who is going to be, when it's his turn, he's going to be counted on for offense. Mm-hmm. But what impresses me about William Eklund is not the score sheet, because, like, in the rookie tournament, like, he really didn't factor much on the score sheet for the games that I watched. But you watch him play, and his positioning, like, his hockey IQ is just beyond his years. Like, he does things now that some players can't do 5-6 years into the NHL.
He's got that unteachable skill.
Yeah, like, he just, the way he, like, his positioning, he knows when to jump into the play. He's still, he knows when to jump in, but he's good defensively. Like, he's so defensively aware. Like, his positioning is just, again, it's just like he plays beyond his age. Now, obviously, look, age does matter. He's gonna need to probably get a little bit bigger, right? But that's gonna happen because he's only 18.
Right, and that's, I don't know. I see a lot of people saying, this is my big takeaway.
Okay.
I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, don't bring him in the NHL. You're gonna rush him. You're gonna ruin him, and all this stuff." And that idea, I do agree with that idea. But here's the thing: if he's already NHL ready, why are you going to keep him out of the NHL?
Yeah, there's 2 things. So I mean, because that kind of dovetails into the question that I want to, like, should he be on the opening night roster? I think that as long as he keeps playing, like, I think that you should give him the opportunity to play until he proves, like, there's some guys where you just know that they're not ready, so you send them away and you let them work their stuff out. For a guy like William Eklund, you give him the opportunity to play until he shows you that he can't.
Exactly.
That he cannot hang. And if that's more than, I know a lot of people are like, oh, but what if you burn a year of his contract? But if he is ready to play in the NHL now, and everything that I've seen of him, to me, says this guy can play in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that 100%. I just,
the only situation where I don't play him is A, he proves he can't play, or B, if this is an absolute tire fire.
Right, I agree with that. And the Sharks have the luxury of basically sending him wherever they want. Like, he can go to the Barracuda, he can go back to Djurgården. Like, they have options with him. It's not as absolute as if he were a junior player, right?
Right.
Or Canadian junior player. And so I just think, like you said, maybe I'm not going to say, he could score 80 points. I'm not going to say he's going to, but like you said, you need to give him the chance until he shows he can't play. And right now, like I said, 3 assists in 2 games, still time to get a point in this game. He's factoring in on the offense, despite the fact that every game he's played so far, he's been with a different line mate. Yep. So that's another positive note for him as well, is that he's flexible and he can work with whoever you put him with, which obviously you want in somebody who's going to be a franchise guy potentially.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I did see this on Twitter, so I feel the need to bring it up just because we were talking about it. So Santeri Hataka as of 14 minutes ago, I'm sure this has changed, but as of 14 minutes ago, he was second in ice time with 9 minutes 27 seconds, and according to Curtis Pashelka, playing a quiet, steady game and could have the inside track to that 6D spot if Knyzhov can't play.
There you go.
So what I mean to say by that is he's getting praise everywhere.
Mhm.
Pataka is. But we're talking about Eklund. I just felt the need to bring that up.
That's fine. No, that's fine by me. Like, and here's the thing. Like, I understand like the idea of rushing a guy, right? Because obviously, like, the Sharks are going to look back at like a guy like Mirko Mueller, right? I think that's going to be the quintessential. The Sharks rushed him, but again, like, this is why you let him play until he proves he can't. The problem with Mirko Mueller was they kept him long past where he proved he wasn't going to cut it, to the point where they couldn't send him back to junior because his junior team didn't have an import slot for him anymore. So he just sat in the press box, right? Like, and that's but if he shows he can play, and that's the thing, like, that's my takeaway from everything I've seen. I see no reason. The best way to develop a player isn't to just hide him in the minors. It's to get him to play against players the highest caliber that's not going to hurt him, right? So if that's the NHL, that is what's best for his development. Why are you going to put a guy who can hang in the NHL in the AHL? Why not put him against, the best? If he can't hack it, then yeah, you send him to the AHL, and that's fine. I mean, I think the idea of sending him back to Sweden is Looney Tunes crazy. Like, to me, even if you don't want him, maybe if he doesn't make the team at a camp, and I still think he plays games in the NHL to start the season. Mm-hmm. I want him in the AHL. I want to call him up whenever I can.
And you know what? Yeah, I agree, because if he's in Sweden, you're not going to want to call him up.
You're not going to call him back.
Right.
He's gone. And then what, right? I mean, and maybe that's okay if the team's like a complete dumpster fire and you don't want him in that environment. Like, if something goes, super sour, and this team's a dumpster fire and everyone looks like they hate life, and everyone wants to get traded, then maybe you don't want him there, right?
Right.
But I feel like for a guy like Eklund, who's done what he's done so far, and again, I'm not saying that he's going to, make the team out of camp and stick all 82 games, but I think he should get the opportunity to try based on what he's done.
I don't think it should be absolute that he just goes back to the AHL or the Swedish Hockey League. I think he should get the opportunity to try, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, and if he doesn't, if they decide that, he gets, a few games into the season, I really don't care if they burn the first year of his ELC either.
No, me neither.
Like, if that's where he's going to get the best competition and the best chance to improve, then that's what they should do, right? Like, I look at this team is going to be, this team as constructed, like, there's no magical hide Eklund for X period of time, because it'll be long past that. Like, Eklund will be on this team. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, like, well, once, Couture's gone, whatever, then it's going to be Ferraro's team. I'm not sold it's going to be Ferraro's team. It might be Eklund's team.
Well, not only that, but it's like, Couture's not going to be gone for 6 years. Like, you really
And that's my point.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is, like, you're really saying, like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll see. Like, people say, oh, in 6 years it's going to be Ferraro's team. It's like, well, okay, but in 6 years Mario Ferraro is going to be 29, and you're going to have the same people saying, oh, don't sign him long term, he's old. Like, right?
Yeah.
But there was one thing I wanted to make kind of as a comparable to Eklund.
Okay.
And so take a look at, so think about Mikko Rantanen for a second.
Okay.
He plays in the Liga, which is the Finnish league, obviously. Does very well there. Drafted, and he gets his 9 games. You know how many points he had in those 9 games?
How many?
0.
Okay.
He was scoreless in his 9 games. Everybody's thinking, wow, we called this guy up. He had no points. And then he went to the AHL, dominated the AHL, 60 points in 52 games as an 18-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And then his first full NHL season, he only had 38 points in 75 games. And not once was anybody nervous about what he would become.
Yeah.
Obviously he would come 84 points, 87 points, 41 points in a 42-game season, 66 points in a 52-game season this year. So the point I bring to say is, even if, let's say, Eklund gets his 9 games, if he's scoreless,
mm-hmm.
and then that next season he gets 30 points in 82 games, like, it's not the end of the world. It's good steps in your development. And now Mikko Rantanen is one of the best right wingers in the league.
Yep. Another guy I would also bring that example to, where I think is also a comparable situation, is Leon Draisaitl.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
A guy who...
Those first couple of years, Leon Draisaitl, how many times that guy gets sent back to junior?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and, like nothing that happens with Eklund concerns me. Like, I don't think, like, the way, like, again, just if you watch him play, like, I don't know why you'd be concerned about him being on the roster.
Exactly. And to your point, too, Leon Draisaitl played 37 games and then got sent back to junior. Yep. Like...
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to also what I said, like, and that Edmonton team was a dumpster fire, and it had many problems, right?
Right.
So, I mean, again, so like, but again, like, Leon Draisaitl, like, did they ruin him? No,
and that's the thing. They gave him a chance to show it.
Yep.
He didn't have it, so they sent him back until he had it.
Yep.
And now he's got it, and he's a top 10 player in the league. And it's the same thing with Eklund. Right now, Eklund is showing that he's got it. So you play him in the NHL. And if down the road, 5 games, 10, 15, if he doesn't have it, or in Leon Draisaitl's case, 37, like, send him back.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of like, and that's where I feel about, like, William Eklund as far as making the team. Like, I think the talk of, like, oh, don't rush him, like, I don't think anyone's rushing him. I don't think putting him in the NHL is rushing him. I think if you watched him play, like, and just put out of your head that he's 18 years old and just watch him play, he looks like he belongs. He looks like he belongs more than players that have played in Teal significantly longer than him.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, is it really considered rushing him if he's already there?
Yeah. I don't know. That's my take on it. Like, I really like what, like, William Eklund has been absolutely as advertised, and it's the most excited. I don't remember the last time I've been this excited for a Sharks prospect.
I share that sentiment as well. And you know what? I remember me, you, and Kevin doing a show, and you asked us, you said, what's the prospect you're eyeing for the Sharks at 7th overall? And I said William Eklund, and we were all kind of like, yeah, that would be nice, but who knows, right?
Right.
And so just the fact that it
stupid
happened,
Detroit.
Right. And just the fact that it happened, I think the Sharks have been asked the last couple of years, and now like there's something to be excited for.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I'm excited, and that's the thing too, like, this season could be an absolute gong show, but if William Eklund is great, like, that just, I won't like that they're a gong show, but at least I have something to be excited about going into the season. Like, there's, again, I don't know if this Sharks team is a playoff team. They're probably not. But, with the stuff that they've done this summer, the players they've brought in, Cogliano, Reimer, Aiden Hill, like, there's guys, like, I'm excited, Benino, like, I'm still excited to see where this goes.
Well, and say what you want, about how the team is constructed and how well you think they'll do, but you have to give Doug Wilson props because he identified the problems with the team and went out and got pieces to address that. He said goaltending. He got 2 new goalies. Third-line center. He got a third-line center. Depth in the bottom 6. He got Cogliano. Everything he identified as a problem, he picked up a solution for.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah, and if it's, like Tiger says, and if it is an absolute gong show, well, Shane Wright's top of the draft.
And with all these players, specifically with with Cogliano, Barabanov, Hurdle, you could trade these guys for assets.
Oh, man, I don't want to see Hurdle go.
Me neither. But what I'm saying is, like, at least this may sound weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, at least if the Sharks are going to be shitty,
Mm-hmm.
at least they have assets to trade away for futures.
Yep. No, I agree.
I can remember 2014-15 where the Sharks were really bad, and it's like, hey, do you want to give us a fifth for James Shepherd? Like, sure, so as weird of a way it is to look at that, but like strictly if it is scorched earth, like the Sharks will have a launching pad into the next phase, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I've criticized Doug Wilson so many times for being a guy who says a lot of words but never actually says anything.
Right.
But this summer, he said what he was going to do and then he did it, and I think that's it's commendable. I'm still not super high on Doug Wilson as a GM. Like, I feel like this canvas probably needs a new painter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just but I can't deny that, he said he was going to do stuff and he went out and did what he said he was going to do. So, I am, like I said, with everything going on, I guess the preseason games starting probably helped. Actually watching, seeing hockey on my computer monitor probably helped. I mean, I went from last show, I was like, hockey, whatever, fuck it. Now I'm kind of like, yeah, all right, let's go. Let's, it's, William, watching William Eklund's obviously, I think, raised my spirits a ton. I mean, there's a lot of questions on this team, but I still think, it's going to be interesting. Is it going to be, again, I'm not saying this team's going to go and win the Stanley Cup this year, but I think they might surprise us. Maybe they don't. Maybe they surprise us by being an absolute dumpster fire worse than last year, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm kind of excited for the puck to drop for real.
Me too.
And I don't know what else to say on that. I don't know. I mean, that pretty much brings us to the end of this podcast, I think. So
yeah, we in looking at the run sheet, there wasn't really a lot on there, but I felt we talked a good amount, which I think is always good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It was one of those things where I'm like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I had I wanted to finish the Know Your Enemy series because I think that's something that we always do. And yeah, I mean, we've managed to talk for an hour and 45 minutes, which is pretty par for the course for us. Yeah, I just want to say, obviously thank everyone for coming along. This is gonna, unless for something unforeseen happens, this is probably it for Teal Tinted Glasses for now, because again, as the season approaches, we're all going to get back, a lot of the content that Teal Town provides is going to start churning out again. And I think that this show would be redundant in that mix of shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you would have to do all the podcasts, and that's probably also crappy.
Right. Even then, I mean, that's kind of the fun thing is if you really think about it. So during the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the Pugnologists, and you contribute to After Dark a lot. Kevin obviously has In the Reef. So during the season, all three of us are kind of doing our own thing. But then in the summer, because there's not a lot going on, we have the flexibility to sort of pull from each of Teal Town's property is not the right word, but each of Teal Town's shows and kind of put it all together,
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for coming along on this journey over the summer. I think ultimately I probably wanted to spit out a few more shows this summer than we did, but I think we did really good, and I appreciate everyone that had such enthusiasm for this show coming back, because it's been gone for a long time, and I hope we didn't disappoint him. But we did 2-hour deep dives pretty much every time. So I think for that aspect, we definitely kept the spirit of the show alive. But yeah, I mean, I really really, really appreciate everyone, the excitement everyone had for the show and everyone that came along for the show in the summer, especially, when we got into like the real dog days of summer where there wasn't a whole lot going on, even this summer, because I feel like after, there was the playoffs and then you had that just super massive rush of everything, right? You had the expansion draft, the free agency, and then it kind of, we did have that little lull and everyone was still hanging out, and I think we did actually some of our better numbers for those shows. So I really appreciate everyone being along, and like I said, like this might be it for TTG this year, but it's not it for us, right? Like Kevin's as far as I know, Kevin's still doing In the Reef. I'll be on After Dark a ton, I'm sure. Pucknologist starting up. I don't remember, when's Pucknologist starting again?
We're aiming for October 24th.
There you go. So a little bit more time to go, but again, as time gets going, keep it locked here. Make sure you're subscribed and ring the bell and all that cool social media stuff that I'm supposed to say on YouTube. That way you'll see, because there's going to be plenty of content coming your way, especially more regularly as the season gets started, the games start, obviously after dark, after every game, and you will see my face a ton on there, I'm sure, because you always do. But yeah, no, I really, really appreciate everyone, and I hope everyone is excited for the content that's to come, that you become used to, right? And also there is the Discord channel. So if you're not in the Discord channel, let me know, and I will get you an invite to the Discord channel where you can come and talk Sharks, video games, all kinds of cool stuff in the Teal Town USA Discord channel. Hockey Jerk, any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I actually just went back and looked, and we were able this summer. We did 8 2-hour shows this summer.
Yeah,
which I think is, like you said, it's obviously hot and heavy at various points of the summer, but there's also a lot of slow times during the summer, and so I think the fact that we were able to talk for 16 hours over the summer, I think that's really cool, and it keeps everybody at the table when nothing's going on, keeps the brand relevant, all that kind of stuff. But as Ian said, After Dark is going to come back after that first regular season game. Pucknologist is coming back the first Sunday after the Sharks play a handful of games. There is a Sunday after the first game of the season, but we felt it was better to just let After Dark talk about that one game. Mm-hmm. So we'll be back the second Sunday of the regular season. But things are going to be happening, and that's exciting. And so it's awesome that, like, as much as things change and are either really excited or really boring or somewhere in the middle, like, everybody's always there, right? And I think it, especially for something like Teal Tinted Glasses, where we do tend to veer a little bit off topic from the Sharks, that, you guys obviously still hang in there with us and you like what we have to say, which is obviously really awesome. I mentioned James Shepherd earlier, and so I wanted to look just for fun. So the Sharks, when they traded him for a 4th-round pick in 2016, and they used that draft pick to select Noah Gregor.
There you go.
So I think it worked out. There's your we'll bookend that one. That random Sharks player mention. You can follow me on Twitter at @hockey_jerk. The preseason is moving along. The regular season's about to start soon, so going to be, obviously more active on that account. I was very quiet over the summer for a variety of reasons, but now that hockey is back, we're going to be more active, and like you said, Discord as well. Like we are a hockey podcast, but if you join our Discord server, there's other things you can talk about. We've got chats for other sports, video games, movies, music.
There are other sports?
Yeah, baseball, basketball, football, apparently.
Okay.
It's just what somebody told me.
Okay.
Politics, if you have a strong stomach. So there's a lot to talk about, and it's a good time. The only thing we ask is you just be nice. And that's really it. So
yeah.
Back to you.
Yeah, obviously you can follow me on the Twitter machine at IanBlogsHockey. And again, like, I know I've been kind of quiet on Twitter too, but I kind of go in and out of phases where I'm like active on Twitter. But I think as more Sharks things happen, I usually like if there's something Sharks happening, I usually throw my 2 cents in. And I do, like, I always enjoy like the Twitter conversation. So feel free to at me whenever. And, you know, as long as we want to have like an actual hockey chat, don't just at me and tell me everything's terrible, because what am I supposed to say to that? Yeah, okay. Right? I don't know. So yeah, again, super appreciate everyone coming out and watching the show and supporting us the way you have. Again, keep it locked on Teal Town USA for all the usual stuff that's coming up. There's going to be plenty of content coming. It's just an issue of getting the games going so we can get that content to you. And yeah, that's it. Thanks again, everybody. We appreciate you, and we hope you have a fantastic evening or day or whatever it is when you're listening to this show. Thanks again, guys. Goodbye. Groovy.